How many nuclear sites are you considering? There's reports that it's 7. Is that right? And when will we know?
Yeah, we're very close to announcing those. We obviously want to make sure that we've got the technical barriers sought and making sure that it goes to the very heart of alleviating the need of the 28,000 kilometres of transmission lines. So they'll be close to existing coal-fired power stations, and there's about 16 or 17 of them around the country, but there'll only be 6 or 7 that we're looking at in terms of our total energy mix. And that's about making sure that we don't have concentration risk of putting all our energy eggs in one basket, that we'll spread that risk by having coal transitioning slowly into nuclear with gas and renewables, making sure that we can underpin sovereign manufacturing in this country, not with subsidies, because ultimately Australian taxpayers' money runs out and you can't keep subsidising manufacturing. You have to underpin it with the fundamentals of reliable baseload power as well as sensible IR policy. And that can be done without having to spend the billions of dollars in subsidising manufacturing to keep it in this country or chasing some pipe dream of green hydrogen that Twiggy's going to destroy over 2,500 square kilometres of landscape to put solar panels and 10,000 wind turbines and take 45,000 megalitres of water away from agriculture, which will drive up your food prices. We can do this sensibly in a uniquely Australian way using common sense. And that's the solutions that Peter and I will bring to the Australian people very soon, and we'll be very upfront with them.
Your previous government did subsidise, provide some kind of tax incentives for green hydrogen. Are you saying if you win the next election that you'll remove all that kind of tax incentives from the likes of Twiggy, who are putting a lot of money behind green hydrogen?
Well, to the extent of what this government is prepared to spend on green hydrogen, untested technology, but then also if you overlay that, I just say to people living in capital cities, please appreciate what you're asking regional Australians to bear the burden of. 2,500 square kilometres of landscape, prime agricultural land and native habitat to be ripped up so Twiggy Forest can chase this untested technology is a big burden you're asking us to bear. You're taking away our livelihoods. So we are saying that there's a better way. We're all trying to reduce our emissions, and we can do that without putting all our energy eggs in one basket and without chasing and giving subsidies to people like Twiggy Forest on something that is as significant as this. I'm not saying that some of the investment that we have made, but we should get it to a certain point and then allow that to stand on its own 2 feet. And we made a very modest investment.
But that's exactly what this is.
And now I think it's important.
Sorry to interrupt you there, but isn't this, almost $7 billion in tax incentives just that? So it's not giving, to use your term, lining Twiggy Forest's pockets now. It's if he does produce this green hydrogen, that's when he gets the tax incentive. Yeah, but
$7 billion, I'm sorry, in my language, is a lot of money. That's a lot of Australian taxpayers' money. That's not a modest investment. That is a very, very significant investment of Australian taxpayers' money for Twiggy, who he believes passionately. And I congratulate him on his vision and his passion.
Well, it's $2 a kilogram.
But I also congratulate him on the fact that and I think you'll find that what he's going to produce is going to be a lot more expensive than $2 a kilogram for what he's going to have to outlay. But also, you've got to get to the social licence of this. You understand, this is what I just say, people in the cities just need to appreciate what you're asking us to bear the burden of. This is a significant destruction of landscape between Rockhampton and Gladstone, 2,500 square kilometres. That's enormous. And then to take our water away from us as well, not just for urban supply effectively, but drawing away our production capacity to feed you and clothe you. So there's a social licence issue here that I think Twiggy Forest, and I've asked him to his face, explain where that crossover of social licence is about him producing a new form of energy when there are other alternatives and us losing our food security and driving up our food prices for all Australians. And I think that's a threshold question that Twiggy needs to answer when there are other alternatives. And we'd love to see him invest in other technologies that would also continue to increase our supply, but without the burden and without the destruction of our native habitat and our agricultural prime land.
Let's talk about migration just quickly. The budget in reply, Peter Dutton said that there would be a big reduction in overseas migration, permanent migration to Australia. How does that work, David, with requiring more skilled workers here that we just can't find locally at the moment, but also particularly for you and the regions? Don't you need these new migrants?
Well, it is, and this is where we've got to get the balance right. Of those that we're bringing in, we're prioritising the skills that we need and in the areas we need. And I mean, I'm in the Northern Territory. We've got population decline in the Northern Territory, but there is enormous opportunity up here, particularly with gas, that they're going to need more workers in. So this is where you've got to have an immigration policy that looks at the priorities, and you've got to have leadership that has the courage to make those decisions about how you incentivise, because we are giving the greatest gift we can give to any citizen around the world. That's a ticket to Australia, an opportunity to be in the greatest country on earth and be a constructive and productive part of that. So that's where we'll make those decisions and priorities around the skills, whether it be in housing, whether it be in agriculture, whether it be in manufacturing or in the gas industry, and making sure we get that balance right. But when you've got Australians living in tents, we've got to buy time. We've got to buy time for our state and local governments to catch up and to do the job that they failed to do, to be quite candid with you, and not to put more pressure of 1.67 million new people coming to this country, a city bigger than Adelaide, and without a place to house them or the skills to build the roofs to put over their heads. And that's the common sense, no nonsense that Peter Dutton and I are working through. And there'll be some tough decisions that. Make no mistake, we're not shirking our responsibility. But when you've got Australians living in tents, you've got to actually pull whatever levers you can without having to continue to flood the economy with billions of dollars of money. That's not the only way to solve the nation's problems. Common sense is also the way to solve our nation's problems, with strong leadership and strong policy.
Just quickly, 2,800 jobs from Telstra to go by the end of the year. These are permanent positions. This is part of an articulated plan from Telstra. But is this a bit of a sign of the broader economy or just the telecommunications sector and what AI is doing?
Well, I'm always sceptical of Telstra, and particularly for those that live in peri-urban areas and regional areas. We are the victims of underinvestment. And while I understand these are office jobs, it would be wise for Telstra to invest more on ground jobs in delivering what it should be a universal service to many Australians. And that's reliable mobility as well as data. And they failed to do that. They are a virus that is stretching right across this country. And when I've got towns that are without coverage, can't even use FPOS machines in businesses for 2 to 3 days, they have had a significant lack of investment in just getting the basics right. And I just say to the CEO, start to get it right, or I think it's time for government to reach in, particularly around mobility services, in regulating and extending the universal service obligation to do your job properly, because they're not.